Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. This is your one-stop shop to learn the business side of your practice on a deeper level. On this show, we empower you to own your CEO status to scale your practice for growth, sustainability, and profit. Listen in as we talk about how to market your practice to gain more visibility, hire, build, and engage your ride or die dream team, create streamlined operations, and make financial decisions as a CEO. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. It's Brandy Mabra. And today's conversation is one that I think is going to be the message that you need to hear, especially as your practice is growing and as the practice starts to take on its own identity. So, in the beginning, when you first start your practice, everything feels very personal, right? It's your brand, it is your business. You are the one who is starting out and seeing the clients and the patients, and everything is very much in that solo space, and it's very much all about you. As the practice continues to grow, the practice starts to become its own entity. And I'll say, even at the beginning stages, looking at your practice as a separate entity is important for a couple of reasons. And I'll dive into this as we go on. But it's important for you to not make your practice and you as a person as one and the same. And I see this with myself sometimes. And then I definitely can see this with the clients that I work with, where you're taking on the identity of the practice. So, for example, if the practice is doing well, you're doing well. You feel great. Life is lovely. Everything's fantastic. If the practice is going through a rough time, you are going through a rough time. And so it's like the practice and you as a person is like one and the same, and there's no separation. And as entrepreneurs, it's important for us to have that separation. Also, it's important for you to recognize that as the practice continues to grow, it's going to take on its own personality. It's going to take it on its own thing. It becomes completely separate outside of you. And it might have you intertwined in it when it comes to mission, when it comes to vision. And even if you're continuing to see clients and patients inside of your practice, it's still not you, the person. So, as you're building and as you're growing, it's important for you not to ground your worth in your practice and for you to definitely remember this. I also see it just being credentialed and the amount of education that we all have, where we start to tie our worth and how many credentials we have behind our name or how many initials we have behind our name, I should say. I also see with if I am so and so and I have a degree in X, Y, and Z. And it's easy to start to engulf yourself in that identity and again, attach your self worth to that identity. And it happens in corporate all the time where you start to identify yourself as I am this person, I'm in this position. And really, you are more than your job. You're more than your business. You're more than your credential. You're so much more. And it's because you are worthy as a person, right? So each one of us has been given a special calling and purpose, vision and mission that God has given us. And it's important for us to ground ourselves in that, but not so much the obstacles that maybe we go through or the trials that we go through or the performance that might be happening, especially inside the business, with how we feel day to day. And it's easier said than done. It is so easier said than done. Because I know sometimes, even in my own business, where I'm feeling like, man, things aren't going exactly how I thought that they were going to go this month. And that's hard, right? So at the time of this recording, we are heading into May, and May is 5 months into 2024. That's crazy. And the second month of quarter two. So I'm curious to know, how are you feeling? What's going well? What are maybe some opportunities? How are things going? And are you taking on, regardless if your business is doing great or if your practice is in a place of maybe transition, how are you doing? And how are you taking on that type of emotion, good or bad? So, there are some things that we need to do as leaders just to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success and that we're not truly taking on engulfing the performance of the business or shaming ourselves when things don't work out, or we're, putting too much in how we feel about ourselves. And so, for example, this is what I see. Well, the business isn't performing well. So, I am not going to go outside today. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sit around and I'm going to mope. Or the business isn't doing well. So, I really need to take a trip. I'm not going to take a trip. The business isn't doing well. So I can't be as present for my family as what I need to be. The business isn't doing well. So I'm just going to forget about the fact that I need to live life. And especially as entrepreneurs, we see this where people go into depression, they start to have really unhealthy outlets, they start to drink too much. If you look up the statistics for entrepreneurs and the amount of vices that it's so easy to take on because of the ups and downs and things of business, the amount of risk that we take, sometimes when we look at the amount of money that's coming in the door and then the amount of money that goes out the door, if we've taken on a risk and maybe it doesn't work out, or if we've taken a risk and it does work out, things are going really well. We're making more money than what we ever thought possible. We are, doing really big things that we didn't think that we could do. And so when you're taking on that type of emotion, it's very easy to tie yourself to all of that and not recognizing that regardless of what's happening, the practice is the practice, the business is the business. And I've been over so many different businesses, and I will tell you, practices, and when I will tell you that each one has had its own different personality, like its own separate personality because of the patients and clients that have come in the door, the team that has worked, and the providers who have provided the service. So, whenever you're thinking about a business, it takes on a life of its own. And so, it's important for you to really separate the two and for you to form your own identity. Like, who are you as a person? I'm not going to say that you can't be proud of what you've done or that you don't need to be, like, hey, because not too many people are able to do what we do. And a very small percentage is able to continue to do what we do and to get to levels that I know I've been able to get to, that a lot of my clients have been able to get to. And it takes work, right? It takes so much work. But I'm asking you a question like, who are you outside of that? Who are you outside of your credential? Who are you outside of the business? Are you separating the two? Who are you as a mom? Who are you as an aunt? Who are you as a friend? Who are you as just a person? Like, who are you? I mean, truly, who are you? What do you like? What are your hobbies? Do you have hobbies? Are you taking the time to pursue your hobbies? Are you taking a second to really step into living life? Because at the end of the day, we only have one, right? We only have one. We woke up this morning and that's a blessing. Every day that we wake up is a blessing. Every day that we can come home safely is a blessing. So when you think about life and you think about some of the ups and downs that can definitely happen in business, it's separate. It needs to be. It needs to be completely separate. We need to take the pressure off of ourselves to be perfect and recognize that you as a person need something and the business will always need something. The business is always going to need something. Even at its best, the business will need something. Whether if it needs it's really really busy, so you need to hire someone new, or is really really growing fast and now you recognize that it's requiring something different from you as a leader, or if it's going badly and it needs to maybe be shut down or it needs to have some changes made into it, or maybe you need to let some team members go. Maybe you need to turn off a service. Maybe you need to move locations. Like, the business will always need something. Regardless, as long as you decide to continue to do this, it's always going to need something. And even if you decide to shut it down and move into something different, that's going to need something. So it will always need something. So what I see a lot of times is, well, the business is doing bad. So I'm burned out, I'm tired, and so I'm just gonna sit here and just hold myself hostage. And I always recommend to my client said the best thing. She said, "I wish I could just go someplace and be on a yacht." And I asked her a question. I said, "Well, what's your version of a yacht?" And the reason why I asked that is because her practice is going through transition. She has a lot of great things happening in it. She's definitely adding to her team, enhancing her team. She's hiring, a biller for her team, like a dedicated biller for her practice. She's bringing on additional providers. She's got some things going on team-wise, which always happens. Your team will always have something happening because they're people too. They have lives too. So if you are expecting for nothing to happen with your team because you've hired this person, for them to never need time off, or for them to maybe have a death in the family, or for them to get sick, or for them to want to maybe leave and do something else, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So your team will always have something. And so a lot of times when we go through transitions like this, I've been there, done that, have the t-shirt and it burned me out. We'll sit there and just suffer. Well, the practice isn't where I want it to be, so I'm just going to suffer. I'm just going to sit here at my desk and just suffer and just get more tired and just keep doing the things and to keep grinding it out. I'm doing air quotes. And that is exhausting. That is exhausting. So when she said, I want to go someplace and be on a yacht, I was like, "Sweet. What's your version of a yacht?" That could be different for everybody. I personally love travel. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I it feeds me. It feeds my soul. And the part of the reason why I love it is because God has created a beautiful world and we are meant to see it. That is my version. I believe that we are meant to see it. And so my version of success, my version of feeling like this is worth it to me is being able to travel and being able to own my time, right? When it comes to how I spend it, whether if it's with my friends or with my family. And when you are in places of transition, whether the business is doing well or the businesses need some work, you still deserve to be happy. You still deserve to spend time with your friends, with your family, doing the things that you love the most. It doesn't mean that you have to sit there and punish yourself. You decided to create something out of nothing. You decided to do something that most people don't do, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you have to just suffer for it. Actually, the beautiful thing is that if you look at it, it's an opportunity for you to step into something bigger, right? And so even for the practices that aren't doing well, there's lessons there that you need to learn. There's opportunities there for you to enhance things and to get ready for your next level, right? Because we're always evolving. We're always evolving as people, we're evolving as business owners, we're evolving as leaders, we're always evolving. So if you look at every single opportunity, not saying it's not gonna hurt. We're not saying that it's not gonna be tough. We're not saying that it's not going to, not make you feel some emotions behind it. Definitely feel the emotions. I'm not saying ignore it, but you do have to acknowledge the fact of how are you handling it and what is it doing to you as a person. So if you are, again, sitting there like, "Well, I just can't," or "It's too busy, things are going too well, and so I can't take time off." It's the opposite can happen too. I can't take time off. I can't go do that thing. I can't be there for my kids. I can't be there for my family. I can't be there for myself because things are busy. When things are hard, things are hard. I don't have time. I can't spend time with my friends. I can't spend time with my family. I can't take time off. I can't be there for myself. So if that's the decision, then the decision needs to be, what do I need in this point in time in order to get through this transition? Whether the transition is on the good side of things or maybe the transition is on the rougher side of things. So I love the version of what's your yacht? What is that? Whether if it's taking a week off and just laying in the bed taking some naps, whether if it's going on a beach and reading a book, whether if it's sitting in a corner journaling, whether if it's going on a family trip, whatever that version is for you, what is your version of a yacht? Ask yourself the question, and how are you handling what's happening in your practice? And are you punishing yourself in some way, shape, or form because of the performance of the business, right? So remember, the business is separate. You are a person and you need things in order to be at your best. And then the practice needs things in order to be at its best. But it's two completely different things and it's not one and the same. So making sure that you're paying attention to that. Like, am I taking on the identity of the business and putting it onto me as the person and checking it, right? So you want to make sure that you check it. To put some structure around this episode and to make sure that you have some tips, I always like to give you tips. Number one, I need for you to start saying what the practice needs and talking about the practice in like third person. So the practice needs additional revenue to pay the bills that the practice has generated. The practice needs for us to implement strategy X, Y, and Z in order to move the practice forward. The practice needs for it to be at its best for me to hire a clinical director or an office manager or a new provider or a new admin or a new biller. What does the practice need? Not what you need, because what you need is separate, right? Maybe you need to hire a new team member in order to take some things off of your plate, but the practice needs for you to hire that person in order to take the practice to that next level, right? So the actions that you're doing inside of the practice are the actions that you're doing inside the practice. It still doesn't mean that the practice's identity, whether you hire that biller or you don't hire that biller, the practice's identity is still its own identity, and it needs for you to do certain things inside of the practice, but it's what the practice needs. A lot of times this happens too when you're thinking about layoffs, right? And so if there are team members that aren't working out or team members that you need to let go, then it's more or less like the practice needs for us to let you go, like it's the practice. And even though you might feel some kind of way as a person, which makes sense, I've fired a lot of people. I hate to say that, but I've had to let go of a lot of people, and every single one, I either cry or I just sit there and just like, man, I always pray after, but at the end of the day, I know that everybody has a purpose and everybody has their own calling. And I feel that regardless of what happens with situations, then I'm part of that journey. And that's how I justify it. But it's still what the practice needed. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean that I'm a awful person because I let someone go or I had to have a difficult conversation. It's what the practice needed, right? So when you start to put in terms, what does the business need for me to do? Then it allows for you to separate that, almost like it just allows for for the practice to be its own person and for you to be your own person and not one and the same. Step two is don't stop giving yourself what you need, regardless of the performance of the practice. I don't care if it's doing well. I don't care if you've just had your best month ever. Or if you are on the opposite side of the spectrum, or maybe you're shutting down your business or you're moving to a different location because you need to take on less of overhead. I don't care what it is. I need for you to not put yourself in a place of punishment and to stop giving yourself what you need as a person in order to get through this transition. Because whether the practice is doing well, that's still a transition. There's still things that are going to, especially if things are getting busier, there's still going to be things that are going to require your energy and your attention, and you have to make sure you're feeding yourself. If things are on rough road, on rocky rivers, then your practice still needs for you to show up and for you to have this energy and the attention, and you still need to feed yourself. Like either way things are going, you have to put on your oxygen mask first, and you don't stop doing that. You don't punish yourself. You don't sit there and hold yourself hostage because the team isn't doing what they need to do. Like you can still take a break and still come back and make sure that your team's okay. Like it's okay. It is okay. Now there are certain seasons, I will say, that require more of your attention than others. But even during those seasons, you still have to make sure that you're giving yourself what you need. So if you need to take time out of the office, take time out of the office. If you need to leave early a day, leave early. If you need to go and then do all of those things. If you need to hang out with a friend, go hang out with a friend. If you need to make sure you're spending more time with your family, spend time with your family. Please. If you need to go get a massage, go get a massage. Whatever. If you need to go talk to your therapist, go talk to your therapist. Like do what you need in order to get through these seasons, the good seasons and the bad seasons, because at the end of the day, you need this as a person. So don't stop giving yourself what you need. That's two. Three is going to be for you to be okay with letting go. So when you are thinking about letting things go throughout this journey, there are going to be times where you have to let things go, where you have to put yourself in a position to care, but maybe not care so much, right? And so when you are thinking about the practice and letting things go, this is going to look in like different ways. It might be business task where you're letting things go. It might be where you are letting go of expectations. It might be where you're letting go of certain services. It might be where you're letting go of certain team members. It might be letting go of certain practice models or services that you're providing in the practice. It might be letting go just some bad energy that you have within the practice. Like you're always letting go, you're shedding. You're shedding in order to step into something new, right? And so you have to let go in order for you to move forward and to be okay with that. When you are, again, taking on that identity of the practice, it's hard to let go. Everything is like, well, if I let go, the practice is going to go under, everything's going to burn down. And that's not true, right? And so you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success by being okay with letting go and figuring out if you're listening to this, like, oh, yes, there's definitely some things I need to get off my plate and some things I need to shed and some things I need to let go of. What is it and why are you hesitant? Where's that coming from? What's the underlying things that are happening that are keeping you from letting go? Where's the source of control, right? Where's that coming from? And when you start to actually just relax and not put so much pressure on yourself and recognize practice is going to do what the practice does and you need to do what you need to do, it's freeing. It's so freeing. And so a lot of us get into this space because we want freedom, right? We want freedom. We want financial freedom. We want time freedom. We want freedom of choice. We want to be able to create a path that isn't charted, right? We're all creating something out of nothing. So when you're able to let go and take the pressure off and just say, sometimes the best thing that you can say, and I say this to my clients all the time, sometimes it just is what it is. At the end of the day, there's only so much work that you can do. And there's always something that you can control, but you can only control what you have control over. And sometimes you just got to let it go. And that's a form of control. You have control over choosing what you focus on. You always have the choice of perception of how you view any situation. So if you are holding on so tight, where is that coming from? And if you are letting go, how can you do more of that? Just really, really being honest with yourself. So in this season, regardless of what's happening as we're going into May, regardless of, wow, we're 5 months in, regardless if you're like, man, I thought I was going to be further, or regardless if maybe something's happened that you just weren't expecting, right? A lot of times we go into the year with plans and goals and dreams and focuses and intentions. And sometimes God has a different plan for us. And we weren't thinking that what's happening is going to happen, good or bad. What are you able to do today to allow for you to give yourself what you need? Whether if it is a coach or community or a therapist, or, I call that the triple threat when it comes to entrepreneurship and making sure that you're set up for success, making sure that you are grounded. For me, I love it. Like if I did not do my morning devotionals every day, if I was not praying, if I was not in my Bible, I could not do this work. And so I know I have my purpose. My purpose is my purpose. Part of my purpose is within my business, but my business at the end of the day is doing what it's doing. It just is. And that is so freeing. And at the same time, I've still been able to go on vacation. I've still been able to spend time with my family. I still have been able to do what I need in order to fill up my cup. And my business is better for it, right? I'm a better leader inside of my business when I'm filling up my cup and I'm not coming from a place of resentment. And a lot of times in these seasons, when they're busy seasons or if they're slower season or rougher seasons, the resentment can always start to creep in, right? Because you can resent the practice for making too much money. You can resent the practice for having too much growth. You can resent the practice for not having enough growth. You can resent the practice for not making enough money, right? And so it's so easy to definitely take on that resentful lens. And so you have to check it. So remember, here's your last reminder. You are more than your credential and you are more than the performance of your practice. They are separate entities. You, as a person, have your own characteristics, your own strengths, your own weaknesses, your own skill sets that you have developed as the person you are, as the amazing person that you are. And you have been able to leverage that to build something that is amazing, that is doing its own thing with its own mission, with its own vision, all the things. So just remember that. Just remember that. All right. So I will talk to you guys again next week. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.